strain on society.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, I do, sir.
It is.
Yes.
You can hear me?
I can. What's up, Cory?
Awesome.
Down there? Let me figure out. I don't even know. Can you see me? I've never used this before, homie. Never ever. I was sitting here thinking, as I was reading some of your comments, and I know your academia goes farther than mine, and it's fine because I'll record this and place it. Even Cory's in here.
Cool. I'm here.
And I was like, why don't I have Drew on here as well? Because he's more of an academic than I am. I only have a couple of bachelor's degrees and it's also just this whole, I don't know, crazy fucking world we're in right now.
I got in trouble one time when I had to substitute for one of the classes at one of the colleges I worked at, where I told the kids, and it was all of these first-year honors students, and I forget how the conversation got to it, but I told them, your diploma is going to mean everything, and it's going to mean absolutely nothing. And by that, I mean by everything, it's going to show potential employers that you have the ability to take on a goal and accomplish it. And it's going to mean absolutely nothing because who cares what you get your degree in? There's
Well, you know what?
don't care.
I didn't give a shit about my degree. I did as far as my goal was to become a speechwriter.
Sure.
I go to George Washington University, get my graduate degree, master's degree in political management. And then I got down to DC and I worked in think tanks and I crafted message and all that. And I ended up with a heavy cocaine addiction and a bleeding ulcer.
DC.
Yeah. Well, I still managed. So I had to take my degree in my degrees are political science and political communication, which is propaganda and persuasion. And I have been a propagandist. I still am a propagandist. When I grew up, when of course in my education background, propaganda wasn't a bad word. Everything we do is propaganda if we have an opinion on it. However, the technical definition is using it in a misleading way. Hey, Cory, how are you doing, buddy?
Hey,
Exactly.
I'm good.
Hey, Cory.
How are you? Sorry.
And I know there's some other people in here. I don't. Now we just dropped. So we lost some. Probably Cory Jim in Hawaii. He was one of those people where, man, we were friends and business owner, smart. I would say ex-Marine, except I know Marines don't ever. They think they're always Marines, because that's propaganda. And it got to a point, where he was like literally making threats against people like me, or you, or anyone that were not American. And I'm glad my friend Willie had just posted, like they're still following it in Hawaii, and put out things like I posted that CNN, like it's a meme from CNN, and this is going all over the world. And it says Antifa takes responsibility as dressing up as Trump cultists. And they're really the ones responsible. And it's a CNN screen grab from Jim Acosta, except capital is spelled wrong, responsibility is spelled wrong, and it's not even.
Imagine how pissed you have to be as a Trump cultist to hear that it was Antifa and not you that took over the Capitol.
His horns. He's probably burning
like you bastard. No, I was there. It wasn't Antifa.
I laughed with my wife today because I seriously considered dressing up in a costume today, out of tribute, and to say and. I didn't because I was low on time and I was trying to think of like exactly how to put this in, and then at the same time I was reading stuff and I was like, man, why don't I ever have Drew on here? Because Drew can put, for one, I know you can put into perspective just what research means for a lot of these people. So I know I've lost a shit ton of followers that are Trump cultists, and I don't really fucking care. And I've deleted some because it gets. I look at things, and I wonder if you do as well. So I look at things through a lot of different lenses. I look at them the lenses of an American. I look at them through the lenses of my value system, and I look at the lenses of also being someone who has worked in propaganda, has worked through the eyes of political communication, because that's what my studies were in, and that's what I still do. And so it's easy to see like how are people buying this? So from someone whose background, and Drew's a librarian, but background is, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's made up of a lot of research, understanding what research is, what resources are, what why is it important to have I'm thinking certified, that's not the word, credible. So maybe you could speak on that a little bit to folks who are wondering what this maelstrom of, the maelstrom probably not the right word I'm thinking of, well, but just this flood and tornado of information. Like, of course, if you're not self-aware, if you're not aware, if you've never been taught discernment, what are some good ways to good questions to ask?
Well, I really appreciate you having me on, because I've been asking myself the same question: why hasn't Paul had me on his podcasts? But that's besides the point. So I mean, and I really appreciate this, because the questions need to start not with others. And and I talk about this with my wife all the time. When it comes to relationships, we should be working to understand rather than fighting to be understood. And the way you start to understand, and that's the first question I always ask myself, is why do I think the things I think? And then get into it. I really wish more people would be like me, of course, but that's besides the point. And by that, what I mean is, when I see a meme that makes my blood boil and brings it all to the top, the first thing I do, rather than share and get it out for everyone else, is let me do some research. Let me see if this shit is actually true. And it's interesting, just yesterday, and I think I've become an ad hoc resource for people. I had a buddy send me a post yesterday about the story about the guy who died of a heart attack because he tased himself in the balls, which is hilarious. And I wish
and very sad also.
Yeah. So, well, the thing is, the guy died of a heart attack.
Yeah.
The guy died of a heart attack.
The first
but
time,
there's no
speak on that. The first time I saw that brought up was someone had posted that he did it on purpose, and I couldn't figure, in some sort of self-defeating or aggrandizing way of going out, which just sounded ridiculous to me. That and to me, it spoke more to a mental capacity, and also, like, I've been one that's had suicidal ideations before, and that just sounds like a fucking horrible way to go. And then reading what actually happened makes much more sense, with him happening on accident, him having a heart attack, and that just speaks to right there. That was just with.
Well, and that's even questionable, because because my buddy was like, "Should I post this?" And I was like, "Well, hold on a second." So it's one of those things where it can neither be confirmed or denied. And if you look at it, that story is connected to a lot of other information about, because there are jackasses that do tase themselves in the balls, to show how manly they are.
Just a ball tasing motherfucker.
Yeah. Well, and the funny thing is that the human mind is an amazing instrument, and we can fill in all the blanks that aren't there for us, rather than let me see if there are blanks, and let me see if there's verifiable information that will fill those blanks for me. More often than not, well, one, doing that kind of research is work. It's a fucking pain in the ass.
And
it takes a long time.
And asking the question why is deep research that we've been talking about for the history of, since philosophy's been around. But without knowing one's why, you're going to naturally look for something that's going to fill that space that's already has dots connected. They're going to fulfill your belief system, rather than looking for honesty. That's where I come from a political comm spot. But continue is talking about those empty spaces of information, or where there's no information there.
Well, and it's just so much easier to fill in the blank with a lie. because one, no one can really deny. People can say you're lying, and then it comes into the well, prove it. Instead of being, here's the proof to my information. It's just so much easier to say, well, it's aliens. And then we all accept that, of course.
Well, I mean,
birds aren't real and all that good stuff. So.
Yeah, the sky is green. Well, right now it's snowing. You're getting snow too, Cory? The fuck?
I'm looking outside. That is a mix of snow and rain. My God,
I was told when I moved down here that there was no snow down here in Central Texas, and I'm going to write the Department.
That's fake news because I see the sun.
Weather, a strongly worded letter. As soon as this is
that's the sun. So I don't know where you're getting your fake news from. My
wife,
it's beautiful.
16 inches.
She's been known to lie.
But
and that's the thing. Context matters. So you're getting snow. Granted, you're also, half a continent away. But I have the understanding of geography and, fluctuating weather patterns so that I'm not going to fight you on the fact that, yeah, I believe you. It's snowing where you are.
I think it could just be really cold rain, Drew.
So anyway, now we're going to talk about the dynamics of water, and
Can you?
And I want to say this. I've introduced Drew. Oh,
that's nice.
It doesn't look like it's snowing there, Cory.
Well,
it is snowing there.
Look harder.
It is. Oh, my bad. That's what. Yeah, that's what I'm kind of seeing out my window here. But and this is one thing that gets me as well.
Well, before you get into that, Paul, while you're thinking about it, I liked what Cory said, which is look harder. And that's usually what we're told by Trumpists, is look harder. You're not seeing it, And, I realize what Cory's saying
here today. Sorry, this makes me good.
Oh, we're glad I'm glad you're here, Cory. You're the only one that went on live. That's on the video. There's other people watching too that don't want to be seen. When you're handsome as Cory, I get it.
I watched Meet the Press this morning, and I heard everything on the NPR because I drive a truck 60 hours a week. Heard it all on the radio. Never saw nothing till today, and I was brought to tears. I was brought to tears. Fuck this. This is our country, and those are a bunch of fucking asshats. Insurrection.
Yeah, I agree.
Over your face. You don't carry your phone in there like you're at a concert because it's insurrection. It's your life. They're a bunch of
well, the first thing I saw was the gentleman from Arkansas, the gun guy that owns the gun, and he had posted a picture of himself sitting at Pelosi's desk. And my first thought, I looked at my wife and I was like, why isn't he wearing a mask? And not because of Corona. I mean, I already get that part, but I was like,
no face, no case.
You're committing committing treason right now, right? I don't want a mask. I'm an asshole. I'm a rebel. And the look harder. You're right. So the one thing I've noticed in having multiple discussions with conspiracy theorists over the world, because I used to work in politics and political think tanks, and I help craft message, and I've had people argue about the message. I've had people argue with me about messages that I crafted, and I would be like, I wrote that, right? And they still argue with me, and I'd be like, I penned it. I wrote it. I wrote all of that. So it's kind of like people arguing with me about a book I wrote. Like, that's my name on the book. So coming from a context is really important. What I've noticed in arguing with these people is there's always an out. There's always, everything else leads to another fucking conspiracy. So it reminds me of a conversation my wife and I had with my older brother. I come from, without getting too deep into it, very religious background, private Christian college prep school. My oldest brother's 14 years older than me. He's an evangelical preacher. My other brother's a couple years older than me. He's a doomsday preacher. And he was having a discussion many years ago with me and Diane. And we were talking about religion. And I said, we got to as far as, I asked my brother if he'd ever been to the Natural History Museum, which Cleveland has a great one. And he said yes. And I went through, there's a place there that's got like skulls that have been found over the years, archaeology that shows from Cro-Magnon back up. And the response was, the devil put those there. And the feeling I had back then in that conversation, me and my wife both looked at him and said, the conversation's over. We can't no longer have a logical conversation if you're going to respond with the devil put them there, because you just
talk about the original. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you, Paul.
But that's kind of where the argument gets into here, is when I start talking to people. The other day, I posted about Trump being a wannabe Putin. And then somebody responds and thinks they're smart and intellectual, want to start a debate. Well, show me his policies. And so I don't respond because, for lack of a better term, authoritarianism is a management type. It's policy follows that, and so there's no debate there. There's no response. And then I was told how people I don't even know are on just you're a terrible debater, all this stuff. But I didn't want to add that I was a debate champion at my college, and I'm a political propagandist, and because then I just start getting to the point of why am I going to respond to this? And I don't respond if you want. First off, I just post my opinion. I don't care what your other side. I'm not necessarily there for a debate. And second of, if you're asking the wrong questions, there isn't anything for me to debate. Well, show me his policy. There's
exactly
no
a good debater does not debate lies. Right. So know. Well, it's like end of debate right there.
Yeah, and I keep feeling that way as far as, okay, this is what I'm looking at. And I posted this about my friend Dak the other day in a men's leadership conference where he's holding a rope. But because he's so scared leaning backwards over this cliff, he's telling the guy who says, let go of the rope, because it's about trust. I let go of the rope. This went on for 5 minutes while he stared at his hands holding the rope until he finally realized I'm believing a lie, that I'm staring at my hands holding this rope because I'm so afraid. And that's what it really boils down to. And so when you get into a discussion, or when I get into a discussion and someone says, well, this, like there's no end. It literally feels like a role-playing game being played out in real life. It reminds me of the movie with Tom Hanks from the 70s, where he got so involved in a role-playing game that he started killing people on the subway or stabbing people. It's like live-action role-playing gone mad. And how do you respond? Or do you even? Is there some people that you just can't, that aren't going to change their minds? And are we going to live like other countries with insurgents among us, blowing up malls and banks and government buildings for the rest of America's future?
No, we're not.
Well, I'd like that. I think that, but if I don't believe for 1 second that what happened the other day is the last. I think today is going to be a lot of. And just from reading, I mean, if you could take more than a couple minutes to see what's being posted on Parler, it's a whole different fucking America, on Parler right now, and it's about insurrectionists. And
well, Cory brought up a point that I thought was important, where he asked, don't these people know that they're doing something illegal? The fact of the matter is they feel justified because they have the leader of the free world. Now, granted, looking at what Trump said, and that's the thing, the guy, people want to say he's stupid. He's very smart.
No, he's not.
He's dealt with lawyers long enough to know where he has deniability, and that's the thing. Now, granted, he came on right after Rudy, who said, trial by combat, and Mo Brooks, who was telling people to stand up and fight.
Giuliani, the nation's mayor during 9/11, has now become whatever he is.
Senile grandpa?
That sweating hair dye. I don't even know. He's become a joke, and that's sad. But whatever. But
that's my only justification.
Right. Well, this is the thing. So political calm.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say that's my only justification for term limit.
Touches.
Because then you should get the old people out at a certain point. Finally, Mark Shields retired from the news hour, so that was a good thing. Because Mark Shields, did you ever watch the PBS News Hours? My go-to place for news, and him and Mark Brooks or David Brooks. Pardon me.
David Brooks, yes.
The original, he died, right?
The original, it used to be the McNeil Lehrer News Hour.
Yes.
So
we just all showed our age.
Yeah, McNeil's still alive, I think, but Lair.
That's it, and that was a great,
Lair-
a great source. I thought also.
Judy Woodruff
Well, and that
is
was
still
the thing.
doing a good job.
Yes. Well, and that's the thing, when we got rid of the the Fairness Act, the FCC got rid of the Fairness Doctrine. Shit fell apart in my mind, because I remember my dad used to watch the McLaughlin Group, which I hated at the time, but now, and then I started watching it later. That's what I loved. It was here two sides.
Oh, it had to be
Let's
that.
listen. Yeah. And now you don't, and that's why we have Fox News, and that's why we have uninformed people who don't. And Fox News, the news division, in my mind, is very good. The problem is, I had a gentleman, and that's the problem with Facebook and things like that. I jumped on to someone else's thread. Some guy had said, essentially, he used to watch MSNBC and CNN for his news, but then he didn't like their anti-Trumpism, so he switched to Fox News, and now he watches Fox and Friends. And my response to him was, you might as well get your news from Live with Kelly and Ryan if you're getting your news from Fox and Friends, or if you're getting your news from Hannity, or if you're getting your news from Ingraham. And for that part, if you're getting your news from Maddow, or any of the talking heads, they are providing you with opinions.
Yeah.
And this is where we need to be asking ourselves again, why do I think the things I think? Is it based on someone else telling me what to think, which you're versed in? That's what propaganda is about. And more importantly, I would say, like you said, the definition of propaganda is to use it to maybe ill intent.
Yeah, it is.
What you were doing was creating spin. You take your facts, you pull the context that you want, and you get your message across.
Well, at that time, it was much more about policy, and so there was it's politics. So there were several fold of my responsibilities, but communication, and it still is. I just craft towards. I use it to craft a message towards the vision I have of how this world can be. And that's changed my political background. I worked for the Republican Party before I worked in a think tank, and I tell people when I was in school, and you went to a liberal institution, a state university in New York, for God's sakes, and I was like, I was on the College Republicans, and I was also a founding member of the College Libertarians. And the way we battled was we held Jeopardy, where college Republicans against college Democrats, and then we went and had drinks together, and we golfed. We had golf
just
matches.
like Congress.
Yeah, well, I love some of my friends still today are some of them. And I worked in politics in a political think tank where it was run and owned. It was private by a Republican, a log cabin Republican in that. But our head legal counsel was a libertarian. So it was I was a libertarian, but our head of communications was a Democrat who still owns a consulting Democrat company. And it was set up in a way where it was brilliant, because all sides, when we were doing our best to use logic models to teach policies that government had to put in place during the Bush presidency, so he could have all eyes on it, all eyes on all of our different lenses on, and that's why we were so successful. Was because we had different viewpoints looking at this information, every side covered, and that's. I almost wish that's the way it was, because there was shit we would get.
Well, that's the art of politics.
Yeah, totally.
You have to be smart.
We were private. We weren't.
I'm
public.
going to
trying to influence.
Yeah.
We weren't trying to influence legislation. We were already dealing with legislation already made. So it was the best way to actually get things that implemented in a good government kind of way. Waste the least amount of waste. So it's interesting to see this, which is kind of leads me into what else I want to talk about is I've been called a hypocrite more than those. Can't count how many times over the last week. Being a supporter of BLM, or the protest of this summer, after we all witnessed another black, and I want to be clear, another black man being killed by the police, because we've all seen it. And now that it's been going on, we just have cameras on our phones now to collect it. And it's hard for me, and why I wanted to call this context and nuance. And I don't know if it's a right-left thing, or if it just seems that a lot of people on the right look at everything at black and white. And it's hard for me to see that and argue and respond to that, because murder, you can say murder is wrong. But what if somebody breaks into my house and tries to kill me and my family and I kill them? That's murder, but it's not wrong. And so there's context and there's nuances. Now, people fighting legitimate, data-driven information that shows by POC in our country have been killed at a higher rate than any other race. Even in my own city of Austin, the Austin Police Department did a study right before all this happened, that the results had come out, that they pulled over Latino and black drivers more often, even though they were 15% of the population of Austin. And after doing this thing, and the police department even put it out, acknowledging that this was happening after they put the data together, had private people come in outside of the department to do this, and this was the results, and they owned up to it, and wanted to put policies in effect. So you're fighting or protesting a legitimate, I want to say legitimate because we all saw it. We've all seen it for years and years. And what are they asking for? What's the main get out of the protests? We just want to be treated like white people. We want to not be killed.
Exactly.
We don't have to worry about this. We don't want. I did 6 different interviews with just people I grew up with in my neighborhood, from a little pin drop in the heart of Ohio, outside of Cleveland, with 6 of my friends of color that I grew up with, I've known for 40 plus years, that live all over the country, different educational backgrounds, just to share their experiences with police that I didn't have. These were my best friends growing up. How could it possible that all 6 of them had similar experiences that I haven't had? And I'm talking about guns in the face, from as extreme as that to, I got a new SUV and I had a new client outside of Atlanta, and the first 6 times I drove there in my new SUV, I got pulled over every single time. And then I started driving my wife's car and got pulled over every time, until I finally realized people said that if you put a stuffed animal in the back of a car, you don't get pulled over as much. And then I stopped getting pulled over as much. And hearing these things, now these are just stories from my friends, and it's not like they were coaching in that. And so then I asked some of my friends that would say white privilege doesn't exist, or this doesn't exist, or this doesn't exist. Well, here's 6 videos. These are just my friends. It's a conversation. Did you watch them? No. Okay. So at some point there's a choice.
They don't want that information.
That's exactly right. There's a choice in denial, or so. Here's what I look at as far as, there's voter fraud every election. That's nothing to argue about. Of course there is. And it's usually
perpetrated by Republicans, unfortunately.
It's documented, dead people trying to vote, that, you know what I mean? People that aren't from there. I worked assistant manager poll one time. It was the most horrible job I ever had. I did it. There was a men's leadership poll. We did it where we worked the polls, and then the money we'd get paid went back to the nonprofit. And then I got promoted immediately to the assistant, and the following election got asked to run it. And I was like, well, no, man, it's a long day.
I quit.
Yeah. And it's a hard fucking day, man. I mean, just on the phone all the time and so much confusion. So anything humans have their hands in is going to be flawed, because we're flawed. So I don't doubt that there was fraud or abuse. When it comes to play is, we have a system of checks and balances. And so we have court systems, and every piece of information, I promise that you've seen, not you guys in particular, but people have seen on Newsmax or OAN or whatever the fuck they're watching, Fox News, was presented when Giuliani's evidence tour across America, where he introduced us to the blonde eyebrow raising. Did you? So if they saw that information, it went through these checks and they deemed it. They deemed it that it didn't hold the water that has already been set up by standards, and it did not reach those standards. If we don't have faith in any of that because it's deep state, then one thing is Donald put several of those federal judges into power and 3 Supreme Court justices, and if they're deep state, then is a deep state so deep that y'all don't realize Donald's in it because he's appointing these people, or He's inept. So which of it is it? But that's not even my point of it. That's me rambling. If we have these sets of checks and balances that these people that even are Republicans that want a Republican, I mean, they fucking lost presidency and the House, all three things. You know, Republicans are mad as fuck, and yet they didn't. They still had principles. And we still relied on the checks and balances implemented by the people that keep talking about this great governmental system. This was the system that was put in place by those smart, intelligent people, and the people I assume got to those positions. So if they've seen the same information and deemed it not worthy enough to hit a standard where they should even hear it out, and those that heard it out threw it away. Where is how can you compare that? In essence, the way of thinking to something that was a social uprising versus we didn't get our way, and so we're going to do something about it. And I don't understand. I don't understand. It's hard to accept that. Go ahead. I'm over here asking 17 questions at once.
Yeah, Paul. Real quick. So smart, intelligent people. Ted Cruz is a smart, maybe not intelligent. I don't know.
Yes,
he's smart. How the fuck does he get into all this?
Because he wants to run.
No, it's personal gain. That's how he fits into it. He sees political expediency
same with
his hope.
Same with the new senator that started this whole thing, the young guy. He's got the guy that they have a picture walking by the Trumper with his fist before Congress started.
And then,
Josh Hawley.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm not as smart as you two guys. Well, I might be. I don't know.
No,
now the the Democrats are in power. So my thing now, I shouldn't be this way. Make them fucking pay for being assholes for the last 4 or 6 years. Make them pay. They always hit above.
Assholes with Obama too.
Now it's time to hit back.
Exactly.
Well,
exactly. The Tea Party needs to step up and recognize that they could care less about fiscal policy.
Yeah.
They were racists that did not want an African American leading this country, and they found a nice way to put that aside. But Paul, I wanted to speak to where I think you started, which is the difference between protest and riot. And I've been trying to formulate, because I've been being called a hypocrite as well, because I am up in arms that our seat of democracy has been attacked.
It has.
And so, people are showing pictures, of course, misspelling Capitol with pictures of DC, being on fire this summer. And I never advocated or, thought the riots were appropriate. I understood the driving factor behind it.
Right.
People have died. And the fact that George Floyd, he may have accidentally been passing that $20 counterfeit bill. I've had clerks run that strip over, a 20 and found out that it's no good. And it sucks. It sucks to find out that this 20 I had, someone else gave me something wrong. But I didn't get fucking killed because I made a mistake. And then that's the other sad point, is as soon all of these victims of police violence, why do people immediately go to look at their criminal record and justify their death because of some past transgression they had? But I digress.
But you're right, because
my point is
people that do that are also the ones that don't want to believe Trump's history of bankruptcies and all. They're the same ones that are like, well, this guy got arrested for that. Look, motherfucker, how many bankruptcies have you called this genius of yours? But I digress.
Well, but back to my point is, there were very few protests this summer that just transitioned so smoothly into a riot. What happened is, from the beginning of those protests, there was a police presence. And at a certain point, those police decided this protest is over, disperse. And most peaceful protesters at that point were like, okay, I'm going to go home. I've made my voice heard. I'm going to leave. And then when the flashbangs start, when the tear gas starts, or even if some jackass, whether they call themselves Antifa or they're just an anarchist, if they throw a bottle of piss at the cops are responding exponentially with, what they see as appropriate response. Now, this is my response to those people who are calling me a hypocrite. Those peaceful protests did not have people standing up and saying, walk down the streets and fight these people. You did not have peaceful protests leaving one area and seeking engagement with police. What happened is those peaceful protests evolved into riots because there was a police presence there, and that police presence was saying, disperse, it's time to go. And some people didn't want to go. They wanted to have their voice heard. But it wasn't like there were no police anywhere, and they walked. And I forget, I've been there. What is it? You're talking about 3 lengths of the mall.
The park Trump was in on one side of the White House. I live there, and I walk down those halls, but I ride my bike down there. So it's not very far because Congress is just several.
You're still walking. You're walking a goodly distance from the ellipse to the Capitol.
People had body armor and were armed.
Well, he's been calling. That's the thing. He had been calling for this for a long time. I'm going to have. He knew
he's been calling for 4 years. Yeah, essentially since 2016.
This is the thing I was going to bring up with political communication. 7 touches to affect somebody and affect their psyche. That's just psychologically, and it's usually from different vehicles or different platforms. And then just the repetition of information over and over. That's how you turn falsehoods into truths real quick. And just if you watch that video of him, the last where he talked to his followers before they attacked the Capitol, count how many times the word fight came out of his mouth. That's political communication. The Rudy Giuliani trial by, what did he say?
Trial by combat.
Trial by combat. So this thinking, these dots were dropped, and his son was up there too. So all of these things had been dropped for 4 years. Oh, you're right, or 5 even when Fernie started running. But in that one moment, these people, so in their brains, they're hearing someone they trust, which I don't even know how we get to how they've trusted this guy, and they're repetitive. What are the words that are repeated in their head? Fight, 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 fight. Whatever Giuliani had said, other things are getting them riled up.
And they're being called the victim. This has been stolen from you. Even in Trump's concession speech, he's like, this is not the end. This is just the beginning. The whole point of a concession is, I was watching Sunday Morning with Joyce Goodwin Kearns, I think that's her name, the presidential historian, where they were talking about how concessions happen. And the whole reason is you've just put in all of this effort to having your candidate win. And when they lose, we felt it last year. Granted, I wasn't too sad about Hillary losing. It's not like she was oh God, I love Hillary.
I feel you.
But I always said to people, if Hillary had been a man, people would have been like, that is my dude. Listen to what I know. Has been in the White House, Secretary of State, a senator, and by the way, I heard that dude kills people that don't go his way.
Right.
And no one can prove it. That dude's got some balls. That's who I want leading this country. But the fact that she was a woman.
She's also a hawk.
For some reason, again, exactly. Again, it shows this is white privilege at its best. If it's a black person and I shouldn't say white privilege, white male privilege is that no one knows how to do stuff better than me. And I say this as a white male because no one knows how to do this stuff better than me.
Hey.
Now, granted, my wife's not here to slap me in the head for saying that, but that's the beauty of having, feminine. Yeah. Well, she shouldn't slap your head from the stupid shit I say, but it makes sense. Yeah. But that's the thing. It's people and the fact of the matter that they chose Trump, and really, I think most people chose Trump because the limit of what they know about him is The Apprentice. And I used to watch it.
TV.
I found it entertaining, but I also had spent my youth spending the summers in New Jersey. So I also know the history of Trump, the contractors that he's screwed.
Mhm.
I'll go off on so I was having this conversation with a group where this guy brought up this story. He's like, oh yeah, so I work for this guy, and he tells me this story about this woman who asked for Friday night off because she wanted to get all dialed up and go to the club and have some guy get her pregnant so that she could get more welfare money. And I'm like, that's terrible. I was like, we can all agree that that is not right, correct?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's legal. Let me tell you a story about this other jackleg. So there's this businessman, and he contracts people. And these people come in and they do great work for him. He says it's great work. And then when it's time to pay, he invites them into his office. And the first thing he does is he introduces them to his lawyers. These are my lawyers. And then he says, this contract, I'm not going to pay you what it says here. I'm just going to give you a third. And if you're happy with a third, then, we're done. No big deal. By the way, did I introduce you to my lawyers? Because if you don't want to accept a third of what I agreed to pay you, then you can work with these guys. And these guys are going to take all of your money in your attempt to try to get what I owe you. And I think we can all agree that that is not right either. Unfortunately, it's legal. And that's where the problem falls when people are like, they're like, well, and could you hear this? Oh, well, it's legal. And it's like, it may not be right, but it's legal, and that's the problem. And I think that's why people hate politicians and lawyers, because they work in that space between what's right and what's legal. And for anyone who missed it, that jackass businessman that screws his contractors
Yeah, we know.
is our fear deposed leader.
Yeah.
Fucking Donald Trump.
That's the thing too. Like, I grew up in a very, let's say, what would you call like the Inquirer? I grew up in a very tabloid family. So since I was a little kid, my mom's magazine du jour was Star magazine. It used to be in paper, just like the Inquirer, and Entertainment Tonight was just as necessary as the NBC Nightly News or whatever their station was. All I ever knew was they would be dead asleep snoring, and if I ever tried to change the channel from one of those two, would pop them in awake and into an angry mood and put that back. I'm watching that. So anyway, but Donald Trump has always been on my radar for as long as I can remember, since childhood, because tabloid Star magazine, and he's always been a douche. And the funny thing is, he says all this. He hates the media is because they have never accepted him. He even worked as himself as his own PR guy to try to get more media coverage. Like, he would call and say, "This is so and so," and there's recordings, and it's clearly him. He was so obsessed with
He loved media he could manipulate.
Right. And to the point of Inquirer had one dedicated full-time staffer, full-time dedicated to covering Donald Trump. And that's why his relationship with the Inquirer is so strong, and why they bought up Stormy Daniels' story, and through all those means. So he's always been on my radar as a douche. He's always threatened to run for president, and even when he came down,
he was going to be a Democrat back then.
Yeah,
he was going to run as a Democrat back in the day.
Even when he came down the escalator, and I sat there with humor and laughing, and I was like, "What an entrance to announce your presidency! These motherfuckers coming down an escalator, like how gaudy!" And then it is. Simpsons called it, and immediately started frothing at the mouth about Mexicans, and I was like, "What the
best
fuck?"
taco bowl ever.
It was just, it was humorous to a point. Like I said, looking through the lens of a propagandist, it's his propaganda because it's not subtle. His dog whistles aren't subtle, and the people were eating it up. And there's a really cool thing. There's a guy called Simon Sinek, and he writes about leadership. He had one of the most downloaded TED Talks of all time about the golden circle. And in it, he talks about communication and language, and a lot of it about Martin Luther King Jr. When Martin Luther King Jr. gave his famous speech, we would not be remembering that speech if he would have sat there and said, I have a plan. It was, I have a dream. Because the dream resonated with everybody's soul.
Sure.
Because everybody had that same dream. He was speaking to people's souls, to people's humanity. I have a plan speaks to people's analytical side, definitely not as impactful. And Trump followed that. The 5 canons of Aristotle. And Trump appealed, except he appealed to where
To hate.
he appeared to fear and hate. And that's the weakest vibration that people have inside their bodies. But it's the easiest to get to, because to get to another place, even love is harder than hate. To get to a place of information is when you have to start asking yourself, why? Why do I feel this way? And then you got to question hate or fear. Fear is at the bottom of it. And for some people, it's harder to do that. It's easier to storm a Capitol and try to overtake a democracy and deny what's right in front of their face, that they're holding onto the rope, to deny it than to face the why. And I think that's a place we're at in our country right now, where we need a national therapist. We need to, this is what gets me about men. Why I particularly like teaching men's leadership is this fucking tough guy, might is right, and this is what masculinity looks like bullshit. No. If you want weak leadership, if you want someone like a Trump, who, if you want to break him down, is a guy that wants to be loved and adored. I mean, that's his bottom rack. He feels insecure. He doesn't feel worthy, and unfortunately was raised.
It's a little penis, I think.
Yeah,
It's the small micro penis that's the problem.
Taught him there's no such thing as win-win. It's always win-lose. It has to be. There's no other way.
And worse, Paul, for Trump, he kind of he wins by how much someone else loses.
Oh yeah,
that's his metric, unfortunately.
So that
if he wins, if he makes the other person cry and be totally defeated, and that, I think, is an anti-American view. And Cory, you said something earlier. The sad fact is that the 75 plus million people that support Trump, or at least voted for him. Let's not say support, because I've been making this differentiation. There's a differentiation between supporting someone and believing someone. And the sad fact is, I think a lot of his supporters don't believe him, but they see some sort of expediency to their goals, whether it's being anti-choice, because I won't refer to them as pro-life people, because they're not pro-life. They're anti-choice.
Right.
They want to control, and again, it comes down to men needing to control others, not having faith in people to make decisions for themselves. But I've totally lost my train of thought. But fuck Trump. That's what I think what I was trying to say.
You said something.
I remember. The fact of the matter is that 75 million people of his supporters, they are our fellow Americans.
Yes, exactly.
And we have to find a way to engage with them. And like Paul was saying earlier, it sucks because as soon as you get to one point where you're like, okay, I have addressed your original concern. Here's the information. Are you going to follow through? Yeah. And then it's on to the next conspiracy theory. So let's not, you've addressed that. So now what about this now? So sorry, Cory, what were you going to say?
Well, real quick, I'm sorry, crash y'all's part of y'all smarter than me.
You're fine, bro.
So
I could have taken you out easily.
So
no, Cory, you gotta.
So in Texas, wait, what is it? I can't.
None of us is as dumb as all of us.
So smart people who say they're smart are just trying to roll one over on you, Cory.
Right,
so
I'm smart, but okay.
I've been wrong. I've been wrong a lot in my life. Trust me on that.
So here in Texas, with all this whole shit that's all crazy and trying to convince other people. We got Ted Cruz, we got Greg Abbott, we got goddamn Ken Paxton. But you know what? John Cornyn, I don't agree with him, but he's a gentleman. He's a statesman.
He's a statesman.
He cares about the Constitution.
He's a statesman. Well, yeah,
About
okay.
Here's
a really,
you know what?
here's a really good. You're exactly right. And this is, and I'm going to hate to do this, but I saw Michael Moore.
John Cornyn. I don't support him, but he's a goddamn gentleman.
Oh, he's a statesman. He's a statesman. And that's something that statesmanship is lost, has been lost in the last 5 years. And you could tell that even if you don't, whatever you feel about Biden, hearing Biden talk the day of the riots that were going on, the insurrection, let's call it what it was, his tone mattered. The words he said mattered. He was clearly bothered, authentic, and you could see in his tone was that of a calm, that's statesmanship. Regardless of what you feel about politics, every time I fucking see Barack Obama talk, no matter what you think of him, a tear comes down my eyes because I'm really just offended and triggered as a writer and a political propagandist of what Trump has done to my language. And it's not that he's exceptional at it, fucking exceptional at talking to his base. He knows it, and he's not dumb about it at all. He knows what he's saying. He knows how many times he said fight. He knows how many times during the debates with Hillary, and he was asked if he would concede peacefully. He gave us his answer. That was during the debates before he was even elected. He told us what he was going to do. He told us, and he did it. And we're idiots, not idiots. That gets into a whole law enforcement discussion where I can't understand how I was listening to him from my office, and my wife was watching him, and he said, "Let's go." And then how did everybody in the world that was watching him speak know that they were going to the Capitol except law enforcement? Like, that's what I'm like, what? I knew. I heard him say it. And the next thing
they knew. They're all on Parler as well.
What's that?
They're all on Parler as well, so they knew what was going to happen. It's funny. I had a friend, or I saw a meme or something that said, these jacklegs had enough time to create T-shirts, where they stole the Marvel Civil War stuff, so they had time to proof their T-shirts, get them all set up, and law enforcement wasn't ready. The fact of the matter is probably some of those LEOs had their own Civil War T-shirt on under their body armor.
Totally.
I
read an article today.
Except a couple of black guys.
I was going to say, I just read that today, that article.
I read the whole story, those two black guys. There's a whole, I'm sorry, I'm in tears. I don't even know how to explain it, but they felt like they were back in 1960, and they're being scorned by fucking goddamn motherfucking
with the Confederate
flag.
One of them was talking about getting hit with a Blue Lives Matters flag. It is, dude. That's how I felt watching that, Cory. Like it was so.
I didn't watch it.
Heartbreaking. I know you were driving.
My wife called me. I'm driving a truck. I'm training a guy. I'm listening to NPR. I called my mom. My mom is a true patriot, Democratic patriot, and I'm with this new guy who's 17 years younger than me. I'm training him to do my job, which he's a good truck driver. But I kept apologizing because I'm wiping my face, going, "I'm sorry. I'm in tears."
We're literally watching the
an insurrection. But an insurrection.
We're watching the end of our country. It's a slow decline. And I just think they talk about Nero fiddling while Rome burned. Trump's tweeting while America burns. And and that's the funny thing. All these people saying that Trump has been censored. The problem is that you're right, because he should have never been using Twitter as his bully pulpit. He should be going to the lectern in the press room, because that's the thing. No one's taken away his rights to address the nation and the world from the lectern. The problem is that there are people there to ask him questions, to ask him to justify his statements, because that's the thing. People are just accepting lies. They're accepting lies because it triggers something. And Paul, you made a point. I mean, both of y'all made a point. There's no statesmanship. There's no room for that in a populist rhetoric.
Yeah.
When you're speaking to the fears and the hurts of people and trying to activate that shit to get people doing what you want, you can't be a statesman. You can't look at the other side. You can't be measured.
What do we go?
You know,
Where's here? Where's the jumping point to help?
Well, I think the thing there's this is off. Just something I noticed because this is Strain on Society is a cannabis related podcast that I do. Is I was reposting during the election all the different states that legalized or decriminalized cannabis, and many of them were notably conservative-led states. There's common ground there somewhere. There's also common ground.
There's money to be made.
Yeah, exactly. When Quentin from the Beard World had posted something, I had made a post about President Trump. And I know he's a conservative, but his post, I thought about it all that day, and it was simply, what does it matter? When there's the majority, I don't know if it's the majority, there's a lot, many millions of Americans that are hardworking, blue collar, that feel dismayed, no matter Democrat or Republicans in office. And there's common ground there that a lot of people on the left and right feel similarly a lack of hope. And where do we go? But the way legal and ethical are not the same. You got that right, Diane. And I agree with you, Emily. I think we all saw, a lot of us saw this coming. And good morning, John and Brian and Dwayne. The common ground has to be found. And so this is the thing. Forgiveness and responsibility are two different things. People like your Lindsey Graham, who can fuck himself, and your Ted Cruz.
I liked it before all this bullshit. Sorry.
No, he has men do that for him, I think.
But there's responsibility in there. They know.
Like I would have, like Lindsey Graham was kind of like a statesman before all this goddamn Trump shit. I'm sorry. And what the fuck happened to him?
He posted, if we elect Trump right before the election, if we elect Trump, he's going to destroy
the end of the Republican Party.
Deserve it, and that it's not timing well.
I saw a good commentary on Lindsey Graham, and you're right. He was a statesman because he was a lamprey to John McCain's shark. That's what they kind of laid out, that Lindsey Graham is always going to follow and pick up the bits of, apex predators, for lack of a better word. The problem is once McCain passed, Lindsey had to find someone to pick up their scraps, and he chose to get with Trump, unfortunately.
That's a great analogy. I've never heard that. That's a perfect analogy.
That is awesome.
That's really good. Yeah, like that is truly what he is. I mean, although
I did like his speech.
I liked it
when he talked. When he talked about the committee that was formed, I forget, in 18 whatever, that eventually was the end of Reconstruction, and he was like, that is not a good example to follow. I just thought it was perfect because and that's you were saying earlier, Cory. Ted Cruz is a very smart man, and he knows what he's doing. And that's the problem, is these smart men know how to craft their language so that there's like, oh my goodness, I can't believe that you would interpret what I was saying in the way that I wanted you to interpret it, because I'm smart enough to provide myself with whatever it is, deniability, reasonable deniability of culpability.
Search for power.
And that's the thing.
Power. The motherfucker's power.
And that's the thing. If you're not accountable for your actions, you can't have someone apologize to you. You can't seek, forgiveness if you're not going to. And I always joke with my conservative friends. It's like, I thought accountability was a high ideal of conservatism, and I was raised I was raised in a very conservative Republican household, but the Republicanism that my family ascribed to was Eisenhower. My grandfather taught at Naval Academy, and so I have this balance. But at the same time, and again, I get accused of being a Democrat as well, but I'm an unaffiliated voter.
Me too.
I tend to not vote for Republicans nowadays because they haven't provided me with a reason to.
No, their values.
But, I
so
keep
far off
dabbling.
mine. I mean,
And Paul,
basically- Go ahead.
you might be the help to this, and I've been trying to craft this book on my own, but maybe it needs a co-author, is I want to be a Republican. That's the title of the book. And then the subtitle is something like, but the GOP just doesn't understand what that means.
Right.
And this idea, if anyone's ever watched the movie Why We Fight by Eugene Jarecki, it's an amazing movie. And it begins with Eisenhower's farewell speech to the nation, when he warns of the rise of the industrial military complex. And granted, I know we're going far off, but the thing is that this Trump stuff did not just spring out of nowhere.
No.
If anyone's watched the Reagans recently or watched Boogeyman, which is the story of Lee Atwater, I like to say movies because reading takes a lot of goddamn time.
Well,
but
we promote reading and movies here at Strain on Society.
Reading's good.
I love reading,
but
reading. Yeah, I get it.
Reading takes 5 hours to get, and you really, I think. The other thing is you get it in a different spot of your brain.
Yeah, well, you get to be the producer of it, and when you read, I feel like when I read, I'm a co-contributor, whereas watching TV is much more passive. But that's just how I look at it. But I write as well, so it's fun to I don't know, because when you're reading, someone can describe a character, but you're still seeing it in your head, and that why the character might look different in all three of our heads, whereas it's just more active in my estimation of it, which is why I enjoy it. But I also get it's time consuming. And look, this was 2020. I'm an author, and out of all the years, this is the least amount of reading of books I did at any time, where I had more time to fucking read. And I have to, now I'm getting back into the reading because I read a lot of articles, but it's just not the same. I want my own imagination, and I'm also trying to finish a book. So I notice that I slow down writing when I slow down reading.
My wife gave me this book for Christmas because I don't read. Can you see?
Oh, nice. I saw him speak here in Greensboro. He was freaking amazing.
I've read,
and he talked about
2 chapters.
He talked about how religion, kind of way back in the day, when like the seat of intelligence was in the Middle East, because there were so many different cultures and societies coming together, and then religion. Which, speaking of, since this is church, you want to talk about the original conspiracy theory. We'll start with Santa. We'll start with Santa, because I don't want to go to, the guy with the solid beard. Because you know God wins every comp he's in. Best of show and all that. I mean, it's just real. Because he's going to present beard.
He just snaps his fingers. Like it was a cross.
Exactly.
Holy shit.
But that's the thing. I don't necessarily ascribe to what some guy in a gated community in the sky is, laying down for all of us. But, so I'll just start with this conspiracy theory, is Santa. People got to stop lying to their kids. I mean, it's that lie that leads to Q. And
well, I mean, there's a lot of dots in between there, but maybe you're right. Hey, I grew up religious, believing in Santa.
Was a real guy.
No, because really, I mean, and this is where I want to try to get everyone to follow the Druanon. The fact of the matter is that Claus is spelled with a Q, and you didn't know it, but sorry.
Oh my God, I'm dying. Oh,
so
shit. I just started coughing. Drew speaking in tongues. I started coughing in tongues. I don't know what's going on.
Well, that's the thing.
That's the best.
That shit's entertaining. When people get all, it's like, oh my God, I gotta listen to this guy, regardless of what wacky bullshit. Yeah. Hold on.
Oh my God, I might have peed myself a little bit.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Let's talk about serious stuff.
Drew looked like
I got the robe on. I am ready, people. So let's see.
Let me find my sandals.
Hey, before I caused this, that book it felt like Neil deGrasse Tyson was like speaking to me. That's a good book.
Oh, that's a good writer then.
Reading, so I've got 2 chapters.
That's good. That's good writing.
Felt like he was talking.
Well,
to
the
me,
good thing is that book's about what 150 pages as well, so it's really, you know.
Sorry.
Well, that's a tough thing when you look at a book like this. I mean, that first word you read is like, ah, shit, this is gonna be a lot of work, you know. But it's like you gotta dive into it, and that's one of the things I would say when it comes to researching. You know, you don't have to know everything. You know, when you have a question, you can go to the table of contents in a book that you find to be worthwhile. You can go to the back, to the index, find the word that you're focused on. And that's the other thing I would lead into, and this is me again trying to, you know, turn you all to Druanon, but in a more sensible way, which is really to...
Should we be on 4chan right now, or Reddit, or something? I don't even know. We're on Facebook Live.
Well, no, I get booted off of that. For essentially, it's we all have to think for ourselves.
Yeah.
We have to ask ourselves the right question. We have to be able to formulate the correct questions to Google and realize that lies are a form of information. And when we give it up to a search engine, we have to know how to look at that. The first page sometime is all going to be bought for ads. And that's the thing. We have to be able to differentiate between what's fact and what is a lie.
If you could go, like, if something seems funny to you or weird, I see so many people share satirical news sites, and if something sounds weird, you go to their site and their homepage and on their Facebook about.
Sure.
Every time I go to that, it'll say this is satirical, blah blah.
Well, that's how they cover their ass.
But
that's how they cover their ass to say, I was just joking.
I get some of these. No, I mean some of these are 100. If you read it with any kind of discernment whatsoever, I mean they're just ridiculously satirical to the point of, I think they're doing this to see if people will share it and believe it. And I've seen people do. I've seen it, especially in the pit bull world, dude. Oh my gosh, it's insane. And I've sent. I used to try to be like, no, here's. You guys realize you're the one spreading this, and it's from a satirical website. It was like Christian single white women against pit bulls or something. That was the name of it.
Well,
and they were all
it's a circular fallacy that they use for themselves. I mean, right now, you know, Trump's doing it where he says, you know, they're saying that. And then, you know, Fox News will say, hey, they're saying that. And then they use that, hey, these people, you know, to justify it. And then we as people, instead of asking the questions, well, who are they?
Hey.
You know, who's saying it? And when Trump says they, he's saying, I'm saying this.
I tell you, and like, I mean, that's the whole thing is talking about, that's a perfect example when the people are asking, like your cruises or the people that were objecting. Well, the country, there's so many people in the country that are saying they think this is fake and they think that there was this and this and this. How they have all these questions, they deserve to be addressed. Well, Cruz, you were the one that was sharing. You were the provider of the information. If you guys remember back when Hunter Thompson said something about what the fuck is his name back there in the election where Nixon won, and it was one of the people running for the Democratic primary. And he had started an article that this guy was on some kind of super drug, and there were doctors from South Africa coming in to administer it, and he was spreading it. And so he was on a late night, and people started taking it seriously. That I think it was adrenochrome. Holy shit, perfect, which is now popular.
Oh yeah, okay.
And this was Hunter Thompson writing this, and so he was on a talk show. And they were asking him about it. He said, well, there was a rumor about this going along, and as a journalist, it's my job to talk about what's happening. And they were like, well, where did you hear it from? He goes, oh, I started the rumor. and it was funny and a joke. And he's a satirical journalist, except now it's our legislators and representatives that are starting a rumor and then backing the rumor and saying, people are believing this rumor that they've heard. I think we should address it. Well, you're the one that started the fucking rumor. You're the one that keeps saying it, Trump. You're the one that keeps saying it, Cruz. They are listening to you because you're their representatives. And then they're parroting it back to you, and you're using that as means to subvert the will of the people.
Well, and that's where we have to, ask those questions which impose themselves into that fallacy, and then it's kind of like you want to really impose yourself into that fallacy.
This is church, Drew,
sorry, but anyways, I was just joking.
I know.
But anyways,
the weirdest church people come to.
Sure. Well, I forgot. It's Sunday morning.
I'm
so.
just kidding, dude. I know it's not. I mean, it's a straight on society brand of church.
The problem is that long ago, people started buying into first anti-elitism, which I want the best amongst us doing the best. I want people to ascribe to like try to reach the pinnacle of what I want people to make me feel bad about myself, like I should be doing more. Because that's the thing. I have a choice at that point, but I digress. Then there's anti-intellectualism and all this stuff. And that's, reading, it's kind of like learning. And learning's bad because I don't want to be one of those smart people. And that's a sad thing. Instead of asking the questions of our authorities, and that's the thing. I would hope that I could count on the president not to lie to me.
Yeah,
but we can't do that any longer.
No.
And politicians lie by all means.
But they've been doing that for years and years and years.
Well, that's what I was going to get to.
Problem as well. That's why I was going to school to be their mouth to write their lies. Essentially, that was my.
Sorry.
That was my.
When
I didn't think of it. I didn't think of it in those terms at the time, mind you. I thought of it in terms of. Here, let me use a skill where I can help. I was thinking about the people where I grew up with. So, but in hindsight, that's totally what I wanted to be my career was to write those lies. And and there's so many justifications on how to do it. The difference is, and when I brought up Michael Moore before, and we're going to wrap this up a little bit, but I'll bring it up as this point is, he said when he was being interviewed before Trump. They were asking him about how critical he was of Bush. And if you've seen any of his documentaries, he obviously was critical of him. And they asked him, well, what's the difference between Bush and Trump? And I'll never forget his response. And I'm getting chicken skin thinking of it. He said, with Bush or any other Republican, we differ so much, and how things get done. He said, but they have a foundation. They have a foundation of principles that they believe in, even if I don't. I always know, I know their come from, I know their foundation, I know what it's rooted in. And it's rooted in patriotism. It's rooted in love of country.
And reality.
And in reality,
real.
Yes.
With Trump, he said Trump, because he's like, if everyone has been following Trump throughout their lifetimes, he doesn't have a foundation of principles, unless the principles benefit Trump. Like his principles are based on what he wins. And his other principle is destroying. And if you go and you're against him, it's not I have to beat you. Drew said it earlier. I have to destroy you. That person got elected as a president of the United States of America. And that's why so many people were terrified. Because this guy, even when he first got elected, because his MO is win-lose. Not win-win, not win, lose, or draw. Win. And the person that loses hard. And that's how he was raised. That's how his father's business MO was. But that's what we elected as the president of this country. So there's a lot of people in our country that believe might is right. And they believe in information and knowledge is not as important as chest fucking pumping and bullying and destroying. And that is one thing I don't know how we cross, and I can look at that. Like I watched 13 Hours the other day. I'm a veteran, and I was never, and I know it's a Michael Bay movie. It's all this stuff, and I read.
You're getting right to what I wanted to talk about. Is more people died on Wednesday.
And my point being is I have respect for like professional soldiers. When I was in the military, people that, here's where it comes from is in my own life is when you have fight or flight, the ability to still act is always something that I'll admire and respect because it's something that I struggle with that I want more of in my life is not to let the fight or flight take over. So that takes, I mean, to be trained to be like a SEAL or something like that, you're literally training yourself to act against nature, how we're built. You're acting against physiology. Hence why PTSD is so rampant among veterans. But in those particular cases,
and you're trained for that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so there's a amount of respect in people that just are able to be able to do that. And I was only reminded, I know those movies are all over dramatized. I read Black Hawk Down when it first came out. I worked at a bookstore. The book is much interesting, but there's no way you could have put that into a movie. There's too many moving pieces, too many characters. So I get it. They're dramatized. But the element of thinking is, I just saw that Walker, Texas Ranger is redone. It's coming out, rebooted.
Oh, geez.
The
Chuck Norris,
glorification,
of course, right?
the glorification
I won't watch it unless it's Chuck.
of authority figures being the heroes has got to change. We have been doing that since from Hill Street Blues back to who's he? Well, Fall Guy was great, dude. That was a stuntman. Let's get it straight. That was Lee Majors at his finest with Heather Thomas. Where's my poster? I still have that Heather Thomas poster. Signed, I think.
I couldn't help myself.
I didn't know why that my pants kept getting tighter in the growing. I couldn't figure out what was going on. I was young, but I knew something was happening. Every time I saw Heather Thomas.
Sorry.
It's okay. I'm in that place of, I use my sword is the written word or spoken word. What do we do? Where do we reach this impasse? How do we find that common ground? And I'm angry right now. Like, fuck them. Fuck MAGA. That's how I feel.
And Paul, could I say one thing, and then I'll let you finish your show?
Tell me what the answer is, because I don't know it. Maybe
well,
I don't
but
know.
Here's one thing that I want to say, because I don't think what we need to do is show all this stuff that you're accusing, because narcissists, when they make an accusation, it's more often than not an ownership of it. It's admittance. And that's the problem, is you got all these people, and it's easy to do. Psychologically, it's much easier to offload my negative feelings onto somebody else and accuse them of it rather than fight it within myself. And by fight it, I mean first accept it. We got to accept the shit about ourselves.
We're all a mirror of each other. We're a mirror.
And then we can work through it. But I wanted to make one really keen point, which I think you touched on for a second.
Okay.
Which is, there were more people that died this past Wednesday on the assault of our capital than died during Benghazi. Yeah. And Benghazi was such a freaking nightmare for those people. They better step up. If they're going to call us hypocrites, I want to hear the chance of put him in jail. Who caused this event? And there are a lot of people. There's some treasonous individuals that need to go. And I'm pissed for our country as well, because I've been accused of being unpatriotic so often. And it hurts me, because when I'm asking you to think for yourself, when I'm asking you to take on the real, because I feel the true ideals of a Eisenhower Republican are that people are good. And people need help for one another, and we can count on our neighbor to go help us when we're in need, whether it's a cup of sugar or a place to stay while my house is burning down. You know, there used to be this idea that we're basically good, and that's why they would say we don't need government. But the fact of the matter is, people have started focusing on the few as opposed to the many, and it all falls apart. So if people want to be upset and be consistent, get upset about this Capitol insurrection, utilize that same vile anger that you had for Benghazi, which after 2 years of what you call it, there you go. And that's research is just imagine what the mud it takes for people to investigate. Researching what other people have already done the hard work on is easy. Take the time to do that easy step, which seems hard, but if you're the one that has to go, be called fake.
Remember my senior
for learning
in high school was on Nazi skinheads. You know how I had to write it? I had to go to the library, and I had to use a Dewey Decimal System, and I had to look up. And then in my high, if they didn't have the information that I was looking for, I had to go like the community college and then I had to move. It was a lot more fucking work, and I typed it. I typed it on a typewriter.
Microfiche.
Right, like so. It's funny to me, like it ain't that. And when people have approached me or come at me with some information, and I look at it and I'm like, well, this, especially with YouTube videos, God damn it. That's not. It's hard. That's not that's as much research as me watching Star Wars and saying I understand the universe as well as Neil deGrasse Tyson. because I saw Star
But
Wars.
Paul, the good thing about that is when you had to go do that research, as opposed to doing it here, you didn't have to worry about, oh, this card is telling me the truth.
Oh no, yeah, right.
And
Right.
this card is telling me an absolute lie. You didn't
You know
have
how
to
I
worry
know
about
that?
that.
Because there was an index throughout every fucking almanac or encyclopedia. There's an index. Everything that was mentioned in an article or said article referenced. Every single one of them referenced directly. And I've tried to explain, and I do it in a way that's satirical or funny. Like, it's obvious who here who's never had to write a fucking term paper before. Because even in high school, you still had to have your resources. You had to leave your resources on the page so they could be checked and verified. And that's high school. And it was because how inundated I was with YouTube videos. And I was like, what, are you kidding me? I mean, there's almost a response, and maybe it's just because I get mad because I fucking wrote so many goddamn papers that I'm like, damn it, dude, you know how much bullshit time, and I got called on shit too. My professors didn't mind doing that when I would try to force my opinion through a reference. I wasn't even that good at it, or they were just really good at calling me like, wait, are you kind of taking some liberty with what they're saying and they start taking it out of context? And I knew it.
The beauty of using context.
Yeah, well, I
Just,
knew I was doing
instead of
it.
taking this statement, I'll take this one.
But I just think of those professors and I think of these videos I get and I'm like, no, you would never pass there. I mean, God, it is flabbergasting. And we gotta end this up because like it when I was a kid and forced to go to church. I remember when the pastor would go long and I'd be like, God damn it, I'm hungry and I want to get high. I'm only 7. I've been smoking weed my whole life.
So which of us is the pastor then? It's you, right? It's you. You're the pastor.
Oh, I am the pastor.
Okay.
Yeah, well, that's funny. You know, I've been researching about
Is that Universal Life Church or Judaism?
I'm looking at whatever's easiest, and I can add smoking cannabis. So us down here in Texas can smoke cannabis legally by being a part of this religion, but it's a lot to go through. It's a lot to go through. And I also, but I have to write a curriculum, and so I was kind of stoked about writing a curriculum, talking about Drew-anon. It'd be P-anon. Wait, P-anon.
Yeah, I would go with a different, do Paulanon. Don't do P-anon. It'll get mixed up with peon and then be peed on.
Right. I was
and
thinking
then,
more
you
about
want
peon.
to,
yeah, I might want to
use your whole name.
Sorry,
but it's funny anyway.
Somehow I got.
How do you do? You didn't write.
Oh, look, volume went away.
Well, hey, that's good news. Maybe with the national, federal changes, there might be a federal anti-decriminalization law, but I'm sure here in North Carolina, they'd still make, okay, well, enough for those crazy federals. We're making it illegal here.
I can only hope. It's frozen.
Well, I still hear you. I don't hear Paul anymore. I think I froze you all.
Somehow, I don't know what happened. It started freezing. I don't know how I became part of this
His
church.
time limit came off. The hook's coming out. The Sandman's dancing on out to him.
Come on, Paul. Where you at? He's just jabbing it up.
We got muted. It's over. He's given his end talk to everybody.
This was awesome. Thank you guys for letting me be part of this. See you guys.
Oh, there we go.
Right.
I can hear you
I
now.
wanted to say to Cory, I always believe in the 1 + 1 = 3. So there's Drew's perspective, my perspective, and together we come up with different ones. You add Cory in here, it only enlightens the conversation and points out things that Drew or I wouldn't have seen. So I'm glad that Cory was here. He's a great guy anyway. And I really appreciate you for this, Drew. And I have thought you are on my guest list. It just seemed today as I was sitting here right as I was getting ready to do it, I was like, man, I should have Drew on here. It's always been.
Give me more than 5 minutes. Next time, and I'll groom.
Yeah, I didn't give you anything. It was like 11:58, dude.
I was watching my recording of Face the Nation, and they were going all over this. Still have my robe on, which I did want to. I know that you want to wrap up, but I've been practicing Aikido for 20 years. I
Right.
really would like to see Rudy's form of, because let's just call it debate. So trial by combat will just be debate from now on. So if you have an opinion opposed to mine and I have an opinion opposed to yours, we'll agree to debate and then we'll just punch each other. And whoever wins has to buy the other person's point of view. And
Ooh.
that's what will be debate from
Ooh.
now on. So part
You
of
have to
Druanon
accept
is
it.
also the practice of the art of peace.
Pianon is only for dark rooms that you can find in alleyways. But that's where we'll
I'm
meet.
going to not sign up for your newsletter for that
Well,
one,
I mean,
unfortunately.
it comes by mail and it's scented. I'll just say that. Thank you, Drew, so much. Well, let's do this again soon because God, that's fun, and I love talking. I love just talking to you in general. Anyway, because you're always a fountain of information and you're funny. And
this was
and
just you and I, right?
What's
I thought
that?
this was just a private Zoom. This is just a private Zoom
no,
room,
this was
right?
on Facebook Live for sure. And I'm going to repost
Oh,
it
well.
and tag you when when it's posted. If I can figure out, this is the first time I've
Well,
ever
everything
done.
I said, I was just joking.
Well,
None of it's real.
I have a book called where is it? It's you remember Richard Bach, the book Jonathan Livingston Seagull came out in the 70s.
Love it.
Yeah, so his book
I don't want to eat garbage.
his book is Illusions, one of my favorites. I read it every year, and it comes with a book called the Messiah's Handbook, because it's all about we are all just arms of God, Goddess, the universe, and like Jesus was just telling everybody that, and his message was hated so much that he was killed for it. So in that,
Sure.
the book for advanced souls, the reluctant Messiah. And in the handbook for all advanced souls, it ends with, oh, and all of this might be wrong. So I always like to think about that whenever I write or do anything, like, okay, well, everything I said, fuck, it could be wrong. I don't know. I mean,
What's kind of my life?
Yeah.
My life saying is the world is full of stupid people, and I am often one of them. I mean,
Yeah,
I think we all know the world is full
Yeah.
of stupid people.
Of course.
Just rarely people do add that point where it's like, oh yeah, I'm in this world and I do dumb stuff.
I tried to say that a lot
Instead of shaking my fist, wave and be happy a little more often.
I put that a lot when I post things. I always try to say we and us, because I always want to include myself, and because as a responsible leader, even those that I disagree with, I'm responsible. We're all responsible for this country and the energy, and it's confounding, and you could hurt your brain trying to figure out how. And oftentimes I have to go, like, if I want more peace, I have to be more peaceful, and that's hard. It's hard when I'm angry, and it's hard when I see this, and at the same time I prove it every time, just on my own peace of mind. And if I want more love, I have to be more loving, and that also means if I want more responsibility, I have to be more responsible, and I also have to hold others more responsible.
Sure.
And so there's no one saying in here, it's as simple as those responsible, and they need to be held to the level of responsibility in all this. And it's really hard when folks don't see it. And I don't know if we put any more light on it, but I like to put a context in there of coming from somebody who does this research and is involved in the library sciences, or someone involved in political communication. It's not all accidents, is what I'm trying to say out there. This stuff's been going on for a long fucking time, and as technology advances, it's one of the greatest things, and it's also whole and balanced. It's going to be one of the worst things. It's just like everything, you know. And to your point of saying not being a patriot, I love myself, and I love my country, and that doesn't mean. And I'm also seeing a nutritionist. I also see a therapist. Because it's because I love myself that I'm willing to look at those parts of me that need improvement, that I've been denying or avoiding, like my health and things like that, until I got to realize, man, I need help with this, and I have to acknowledge them first. That's my point A, and then point B is whatever my goals are to get better. Does that mean I hate myself? No. The very notion of wanting this country to live up to its actual ideals, because we don't. Racism is part of who we are in our country, and this white supremacy, and that's part of who we are. We can't say that it's not. But they're not our value system. We just don't live up to our values. No, I won't say value. It is part of our values. That's obvious. It's not part of our idea.
Well,
we don't reach the ideal.
Anti-elitism. Ideals are kind of an elitist view sometimes. This aspiration to something, and it's like, look, don't make me strive too much. And again, that's a gross over exaggeration. But Paul, I'll leave you with two things.
Okay.
One, I want you to know I love you, brother.
Love you too, man.
I miss you. And two, to a quote that my sister has that I think is very poignant. If you're going to be dumb, be smart about it. So, and I really try to take that to heart and be really smart when I'm absolutely dumb. And I think asking the right questions can help you do dumb things in a very smart way.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny and it's true. And it's the same thing as, like, I joke all the time about my middle name, Paul, initial being extraordinary. And it's a joke I've said for a long time. And the reality of it is I don't think I have so many friends that are just wide variety of who they are. And I would never call any of them extraordinary, but I would say that all of us, dumb, smart, you can still do extraordinary things. And the best way I have found in getting results is just what Drew said. I ask why. My why, when I get to it and I'm honest with myself, there's the answer every time, every single time. Why I believe what I believe, what my preferences are, the things a lot of people say, this is who I am. And they're really just preferences, because and a lot of times it's just why I like that. Why I like this book better than I like this book. Well, you might like it better. Well, you must have bad taste in books, Drew. No, it means that you're looking into it.
I do.
Well, I'm not.
It's all romance novels, based on the cover art and how big the guy's pecs are. Really.
Somebody's buying them, and hey, Fabio was a fabulous man. I used to do that when I started writing and wanted to write books, and my mom was. We won't say she wasn't the most supportive of it. And yet I grew up with my mom reading those books, and I would always be like, "Mom, I grew up with you reading romance books. Who do you think somebody sat down and wrote that trash? Like." You bought that product, and yet I'm telling you that that's what I'm doing, and you're like, well, that's stupid. Confounding, but whatever. Thank you, Drew, and I can't wait to have you on here again, man. You're an awesome guy. I love you too. I think you bring a fresh light. I like that you bring dare I say commonsensical, because alternative facts.
You're joining Drew and I can see it. I can see it.
Like I was gonna say, I live in a world where alternative facts exist, so I can say things.
Well, we
like
all
that.
do.
We do.
Sure.
And that was one of the, I would say, out of the last 4 years, one of the two-word combination that I never thought I'd hear, and thought that would become a part of the lexicon of America, was alternative facts. And here we are, 2021, and we're all just trying to figure this out, no matter what side of the coin you sit on. I feel like that Drew had said it, we are way, 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 way more the same than different. All of us are.
Indeed. Well, and that's the last point of once you ask those questions, when the answer is something you don't like, you have to accept it if it's true. You have to own your own truth.
Yes.
And if you don't like something about yourself, fucking change it.
Yep.
Instead
You're
of
not a tree.
being worried that everyone else is doing it to you, stop doing it and let it go. And then you'll find that once you stop doing the shit that you don't like, you'll stop seeing that shit in the mirror of others around you. So, I mean, we only get there by lots of work. And that sounds, I'm going to go take a nap. So,
No,
all this
it is a lot of
work.
It is a lot of work. It honestly is. And I think a lot of people don't want to do the work in our country as a whole, as a collective. We have to do the work because what's on the other side of it is a lot more love and people, the recognition that if you succeed only helps me. You not starving only helps me. You getting an education only helps me. It's not even, it's selfish.
Sounds very Christian, Paul.
What's that?
I like it. I said it sounds very Christian. I like it. Or it sounds very universal, and I like it.
Yeah, okay. I like it too, and I believe it. And I can't, and I'll do what it takes, I guess, to continue to live it, and I don't, and I'm as flawed a man as you'll ever find, and I guess the difference is I'm okay with it because I know it, and I can own it, and go to therapy and go see a nutritionist and work and attempt to be better, and I'm not competing with Drew, or I'm not competing with anybody else, but that's when I'm doing that, I'm not hating, I can't be a victim and do that. That makes sense.
When we lift up our brothers and our sisters, then they can pull us up right after them.
Yes, that's physiologically proven by the release of endorphins and such when you do a good act, or even when you see a good act. We are built that way by nature to support each other. That's if you believe in God, if you believe in the universe, if you believe in evolution. It's simply
believe in your fellow person.
But yeah, man, it's a simple reaction our body has when you see good thing, when you see somebody uplifted, because that's our natural state. Thank you, Drew. I love you, man, so much. I'm gonna get out of here and go eat, and I think a nap sounds good. Awesome. I'm high. I don't know if you are, but I'm hungry.
I had to step off camera to not do that.
Oh, okay. Excellent. Thank you,
That's
Drew.
illegal, you know. So I love you, brother.
I love you too, man.
We'll talk to you later.
All right, bye-bye.